Okay, we're a good Erev Shabbos. Again, Mazel Tov to Dr. Press on the nuptials of his granddaughter and the Sheva Brachas in Cincinnati. And Shoy says Simchos. Okay, we're learning for Refuah Shlema, Yonason David ben Dvorah Rachel, Hadassah Bela Basfrumet Rachel, and Yeshua ben Chaya Sarah, Refuah Shlema. Okay, so we're in the middle of an Agadata, and this one more Agadatas that I found fascinating in Shas. The next one, we're up to Omer Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. We're about 10 lines off in the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exactly 10 lines in the bottom.
Bottom of
Omer Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, right? 10 lines in the bottom. Omer Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Gedoyla Aveira Lishma, me mitzvah shaloi lishma. Greater is an Aveira shaloi lishma than a mitzvah shaloi lishma. Okay, again, greater is an Aveira lishma than a mitzvah shaloi lishma. Shenemar, in the bracha, in Shiras the Vaira prophetically goes ahead and blesses Yael Eishes Chever Akeni. Just to reiterate, many times we've seen this, that Sisra was the general of Yavin ben Canaan, of his army, and they were defeated in battle by Barak and Devaira. He was on the run. There was shalom between him and Chever Akeni. Yael was the wife of Chever Akeni. She was a married woman. He came into the tent, and he has to hide me. She gave him milk to drink. He got tired. In fact, the Gemara is going to tell us she had relations with him 7 times to tire him out. When he was finally tired out and he was sleeping, she took a tent peg and she hit him with a mallet. We had mentioned that very geschmack. She didn't kill him with a sword because she should give it that a woman should not use what a man's fascinating thing. She didn't kill him with a sword, which is the weapon of a man, but she killed him with the. But anyway, so that's the Aveira over here, Lishma. That's the Aveira over here, Lishma. So the Aveira Lishma is that she killed him, and even though she was a married woman and she was with him, nonetheless the Aveira was Lishma, and it's bigger. It's bigger than a mitzvah shalai Lishma. Shneimar tevarich minashim Yael eishes chever akeni minashim ba'ayel tevarich. Man ninu nashim ba'ayel. Who are the women of the tent that she's more blessed than? So Rivka, Rachel, Baleah, they're all considered women of the tents. So in other words, they didn't Aveira Shaloi Lishma, and therefore she was more blessed than Aveira Shaloi Lishma. Ini Varav Yehuda Marav Lo'ilam. The Gemara in Chav Gimel in Nazir discusses what exactly went on there. But Varav Yehuda Marav Lo'ilam. Why more? Where is the Aveira Shaloi Lishma by the Imais? Varav Yitzchak Marav Lo'ilam Yasik Adam B'Torah Mitzvah Afilut Shaloi Lishma Shematoich Shaloi Lishma Ba Lishma. In other words, you see that Shaloi Lishma is something special because Mitoich Shaloi Lishma Yakat Lishma. So what are you telling me, Gedola Aveira Lishma, then Mitzvah Shaloi Lishma, as if Mitzvah Shaloi Lishma is nothing? You see, a Mitzvah Shaloi Lishma will lead to a Mitzvah Lishma, so it's something. So, and for the Gemara, Emo Kimitzvah Shaloi Lishma. Don't say it's better an Aveira Lishma. Don't say an Aveira Lishma is bigger than a mitzvah shaloi lishma, but it's equal to a mitzvah shaloi lishma. It's equal to a mitzvah shaloi lishma. Amar Rabbi Yochanan sheva be'ilois bo'alois Rasha by Sasha. 7 be'ilois. This Rasha was Sisra was boiled her 7 times. Shenemar, of course, it says the lashon bein ragleha kara v'nafal shachav. It's referring to how he died. Between her legs, kara nafal shachav bein ragleha kara v'nafal. So if you go through it, you have 7 times. You have the lashon of either kara, nafal, or shachaf, and all together you have a total of 7. So it's merumas to 7 be'ilos. Fred the Gemara the ha kamis hane. L'chor she had hana me'aveira. Rabbi Yochanan mishum b'shem ben Yochai afilu toivasim shel v'shlayim roi etzel tzadikim. So regarding fellas, the aveira of yereg val yavar. We're familiar with the most famous Taisus in Shas, Esther, Karka Olam Haya. So by Esther being passive, it's like she didn't do anything. So Memela, regarding the halacha of Yereg Val Yavar, you don't have to worry about what? About Yael. This is the way the Rosh and Taisus in Nazir explains it. Regarding the Aveira of Horayos, then you don't have to worry because Karka Olam. What about Fred the Gemara? But before it had Hana. So how can you call it Aveira Shaloi Lishma L'chayra if there's an Aveira felt in the Shaloi Lishma? We're going to see a beautiful Reb Chaim Shmulevitz in a second, guys. So if there was Hana L'chayra, it's problematic. And that Gemara answers regarding Russia, the type of the Russia is not Hana. So therefore, there's no Hana whatsoever. Okay, that's the Gemara. So regarding Shaloi Lishma, it's a very, very nice piece from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz I thought I'd share with you. Reb Chaim is discussing a ger. Reb Chaim is discussing a ger. I'm just being a part of it. It says, Gemara in Yevamis Mem Zayin, it says, Tan Rabbanon, ger she'bol is gayer. If a ger comes to misgayer, so what do you do? Madina is like mitzvahs mitzvahs kalos, or mitzvahs mitzvahs chamuros. You tell them both. And what's this mitzvah kalos? So Reb Chaim goes on to explain that goyim also have mitzvahs chamuros. If you tell a goy, you know what, you can't kill. A guy understands that. A guy understands that you can't kill. It's a really, really stark a mitzvah, to be a nice person, to not steal, to go ahead and say grace by meals. That makes sense to the guy. It makes a lot of sense. You know what the guy has a problem with? With the mitzvahs kalas. Judaism is an amazing a thing. I once heard a shmooze from it wasn't a shmooze. It was a Shabbos Hagol Drasha from Rabbi Dinsky. He says in the Toichacha, Paka, this week's parsha, it says the first thing they say, you're going to have bahala, you're going to have confusion. The worst thing is not to have direction. The worst thing is that not to have confusion. It's an amazing thing. Rabbi Dinsky spoke out, fellas, by Martin. What was an amazing thing? How is it possible to go from hundreds of years of being an Eved to be subject to other people and to be Bnei Chayrin, to be the Am HaNivchar? How is that possible? And the answer is because we got the Torah. In other words, there was direction. You look at certain members of society who want to be paid back for slavery. They've been freed for so many years, but yet they're still playing this slavery card, that they're still slaves in their own minds. And it's an amazing thing. So much money has been spent on trying to alleviate that, and it hasn't helped, because they don't have direction. Judaism has direction. Every mitzvah kala is directional. Fellas, you know when you get up in the morning how to get dressed. You think about it. Do you put on the right, put on the left, tie this one? There's nothing in Judaism that is not taken care of. We have a shaila about every single thing. That leads to direction. That's an unbelievable thing. And that's why the ger has problems when we tell him mitzvahs kala, says Reb Chaim, that because they have problems with that. Even sometimes ourselves, when we're not so makbid in halacha, and we say, we also throw it away like that. But there's certain special quality to keeping mitzvahs to their optimum, right? To keep them as best as possible. And that's what Reb Chaim speaks out, that we have direction. So I'm going to pick it up at that point. Reb Chaim's direction, and he goes, we have total clarity. Now Reb Chaim now is going to bring in, we don't have total clarity. Reb Chaim is going to bring in now where we don't have. Okay, we're having a problem over here. We're having somebody noise problem. Okay, whoever that is gone. Okay, so again, guys, we're picking it up where Rav Chaim is discussing. Rav Chaim is discussing places of lack of clarity. Ach l'chayra and kol zayis sedayin ein darke shalod nebur l'fanav. It's not so clear sometimes. V'nisha makam l'sveikos, and you can leave a place open for doubt. Umachma shlo sibos. Achas mad the Gemara in Nazir, and this is the Gemara in Horayos. Gedoyla aveir l'shma. Hainu shalafamim ala adam lasa is dava shebe'etzem hu aveira. A person can do something that's an aveira. And yesh le bezeh kavanas l'shem shemayim. V'mkein adayin ein darke shalod nebur l'fanav. Guys, here Chaim's gewaltige word. That's not clear. An aveira l'shma. That's not so totally clear, right? You have a suffix over there. Am I totally l'shem shemayim? Can I do l'shem shemayim? Ki afke sheyodeya shedav is asim in atayra. Adayin yitachin sheyesh lasais mishum gedayla aveira l'shma. Even though you know it's asa, it's a possibility to do it l'shma. Hashenis, the second one that leads itself to lack of clarity, is the Gemara Menachos. Amreish Lakish. Pamim shebitula shel Torah ze yisoida. By being mevatel Torah, you're being miyasei Torah. You're founding Torah. Upirish Rashi going shemivatul Torah lohitzas ames ulachnosas kala. Zeu yisoida kloimar mekabel schar kilu yoshev miyaste vasikba. It's if Hashlishis, the third place, is Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan, ki eis lasos Hashem hevitor secha. Eis lasos Hashem. Rabbi wrote down the Torah. Amri mutal tiyaka Torah al tishkach Torah Yisrael. Therefore, Rabbi wrote it down. Upirish Rashi kishoisen adav l'shem kedushas Hashem royan lehevitor vascha. So Rav Chaim is going ahead and saying you got this beautiful concept of kalis. Everything is clear. There's no confusion. And he brings three examples of places of confusion. We really only need the first one, right? An Aveira Lishma, come on, it's an Aveira. That's clarity. That you're doing the right thing. Where is the absolute clarity over there? In other words, there must be a clarity over there. There must be a clarity over there that I can do it. That again, we know is what we're supposed to do. How can you go ahead and be assured that an Aveira Lishma is done correctly if everything is so clear? That's Rav Chaim. That's bothering Rav Chaim. Guys, you hear the kasha. It's a very nice to hear, that one that you don't think about a lot. But his answer, guys, is gewaldig. Look what Rav Chaim says. It's unbelievable. Says Rav Chaim, Sichas Musa Samach Beis. Hadvar malolo alulum lahevi muvucha. Rabbi can bring tremendous confusion. L'chol ben Torah. Kari kol aveira yitachem bo lishma. L'chol bittul Torah yitachem ba bittul yisaida. Each aveira I can put in lishma, and each bittul Torah I can say I'm doing it for the right reason. V'chol sheila shel hefi terascha shayich beis Hashem. Okay. So therefore, good question. Right, guys, got the question. Omnam legabi aveira lishma. This is what we need. Legabi aveira lishma kvar kosev b'sefer nefesh achayim by Rav Chaim V'loshana. Shela acha shenitn the Torah ein lanu ela ma shekoseb ba. Once the Torah was given, all we have is what's written in the Torah. V'afilu yodei adam sheyitaking tikunim gedolim b'chol alomos al yodei ma'aseh iser. Right. Even if it's what that your action could be metaking tremendous things, it's still asa. Dugma, Yaakov Avinu shenasa beis Horayos. Yaakov married two sisters, which is asur. Almanas libnas beis Yisrael. V'chein Amram shenasa leidasei. Amram married his aunt. It's asa. V'yatzim imenu Moshe v'Aaron and Miriam. Chas v'shalom Elasas came. And those after Matan Torah, you can't do that. Because think about it. These are Averis when we Yasid Kal Yisrael. Think about it. It's crazy. Yaakov married two sisters. Moshe and Aaron. I mean, everyone came about through what? Through an Aveira that you have to Matan Torah. So what are you going to say? I can possibly do an Aveira that is going to be Yasid the world like Nefesh HaChaim, once the Torah was getting Asa Gama. Once the Torah was getting Asa Gama. Even if that Aveira is Ad Kedei Kach going to go ahead and build Klal Yisrael. Ad Kedei Kach. It's going to build Klal Yisrael. Doesn't make a difference. V'chein Amram, and not even after Matan Torah. Val kegoin da Omi Yeshaya Novi LeChizkiyahu Hamelech. Chizkiyahu saw Menashe is going to come from him, so he separated from his wife. He didn't want to get married. He not separated. He didn't want to get married. So came along Yeshayas Gemara and Brachas and said to him, "Bahadi kivshu d'achman olam. What are you getting involved in Hashem's cheshbon? Your cheshbon is you got to keep the mitzvahs pruvu. Ma'adim mefkarata, whatever you're commanded in, you got to do." Whatever Kodesh Baruch Hu, but he's going to do. You do what you got to do, and Hashem will do in Israel. Only before Matan Torah could you marry two sisters, and only before Matan Torah could you go ahead and marry your aunt. Ella shekosal zeh. Mimasha Amra biyal eishes chefer hakeni. Guys, Yal was after Matan Torah, guys, Yal was after Matan Torah. So if the Nefesh HaChaim is true, and it is, how does he explain Yal? How does he explain the actions of Yal being an Ashish Ish and being with the person? Gedoyla Aveir Lishma. Varizeh Choyel Ach Matan Torah. Ach Matzinu Bechazal is Soid Nifla Hameir Esen Yonoi B'Shelas Koshes Elu. For whom Mimashe Hikshu B'Gemara in Nazir Yavamis and Horayos Al Yal for Hakamis Haneme Aveira. She had Ana. Umishani Toivasim Shel Rishoyim Rohi Etzel Sadikim. No Hana. Lamadnu Mikan. What do we see from here? Shaloi Chutru Aveira Lishma Ella Kishehi Lishma Muchlit, without a shadow of a doubt. leloi kol hanas atzmis, without any hana itself. V'nira shekenhu gam b'chol haterim shenimnu le'el, she'ena ella b'shah she'en l'adam hana klal. Aval mis'ari bem shemitz hana, haru poisel es ha'maisa, v'aveira gemura l'loi hayra heta klal v'klal. Says Reb Chaim, guys, but the Gemara is asking, saying that what misana, perish. You say Gedoyla Avera Shaloi Lishma, may mitzvah Shaloi Lishma. Ayukom Mishana, perish. What does Mishana do? It makes it an Avera that's not, it makes it a not totally Lishma. It makes it not totally Lishma. In order to be an Avera Lishma, you can't have a shemitz of anything. It's got to be totally Shem Shemayim. And for the Gemara, there's no Hana whatsoever because of what the Rosh is Hana. And the Mela, once there was no whatsoever, you could be certain that Avera you could do, that Avera you could do. That Avera you could do. The Gemara is giving you a Hechatimsa, fellas, of how to know that what. Now, certainly you could apply it to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Amram, and Yaakov Avinu. Again, you don't need to. You don't need to because it's for Matan Torah. But certainly, when Yaakov married two sisters, the Boina Klal Yisrael. When Amram took back Yocheved, it was what to go ahead and bring about the leader of Klal Yisrael. That's for sure. It says Rav Chaim, a beautiful deher. And now we finish off with the Zayda, the Alt from the Vardik. Rav Chaim Zayda was the Alt from the Vardik. Finishes off Rav Chaim. Ukfar Oma Zikni Hasaba mein Vardik, Bebir Maimer Rashi in the Varim, Kadesh Atzmecha b'Mutalecha. Shakavanahi shebe'issa shehuta lecha. The issa that's mutter to you, Kadesh atzmecha boy, shleitila pania kol shivi. Even any shemetz, v'leizdabi v'cha shum nidnun shel hana, v'rak im tasa kain asu mutter lecha. That's pshat. Kadesh is atzmecha. Once you're sure without a shadow of a doubt, then mutter lecha. So very, I thought a very nice deher, a tifa deher in Godla. You know, again, als the avera karka olam. What's the hana over here? Meaning, Reb Chaim is learning. Then you can't call an avera shaloi lishma. You can't call an avera lishma. She's having hana, and the answer is no hana. But when there's no hana, you know what it's megala? Then you could do it. None of us could possibly go ahead and do that, right? So therefore, that's the difference, and that's why after Nefesh HaChaim, after Matan Torah, you have a beautiful deher. Rabbi Avi is chafing at the bit to say something. No, you're good. Okay, so we did the Indian of okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav. 4 lines up. Lo'ilam yasek adam b'Torah mitzvah afilu shaloi lishma, shemitay shaloi lishma ba lishma. We all know this, right? I know people who joined the share. Names won't be mentioned. Who they joined the share because they were feeling pressure, and as fate would have it, they don't miss share. They come all the time, and they it's made a great difference in life. I can't say when they began share was lishma, but mitay shaloi lishma ba lishma, and I think it's a very good example of it, right? Shebeschar membeis karbanos shehikriv bolak harasha. Now Bolak brought 42 karbanos. What's the cheshbon? He made 3 times 7 mizbechos. On each mizbeach was brought 2. So you have 14 times 3, which is 42. So this guy, he was mechaven mat to go ahead and pave the way for Bilam to curse. So it certainly was this was shaloi lishma. Zachs v'yasem and Rus. He was zeicha that who was descendant? Rus was the descendant of Balak. Damar of Yossi Reb Chanina. Rus bas b'noi shel Eglain. Rus was the granddaughter of Eglain. Slav Dafka granddaughter. She was many years later. She was the descendant. She was the descendant of Eglon. Was the fat guy that Elad ben Gera killed with the left hand in the attic. Ben b'noi shel Balak, and Eglon himself was a descendant of Balak, Melech Moav. So what do you see that came along from Mitay Shaloi Lishma Balishma, came along from this 42 kabbanis of this Russia, came out Shaloi Lishma, came out David HaMelech. Amar Chibarab, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Minayin Shein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekapeach Afilu Schar Sichana. How do HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't hold back Afilu Schar of Sichana Mehacha? So now we're speaking about, we're going back to Lo de Benoisa, right? We said the Bechira And they both laid with Lot. They were L'Shem Shemayim. We spoke out yesterday, beautiful Balaturim. Why did Balaturim say the reason why Ammon and Moab are not allowed B'chal Hashem, the males, is because what? Because Lot was Mechaben for Aveira. The reason the females are allowed in because Mechaben Hashem Shemayim. The Welt asks, the reason why they're not allowed in is because they didn't go ahead and give us food on the derech. So the Mashal answers, guys, Goyrim. Each one was the cause. Not only that they didn't, but what? Because of Lot. So now, Amr Chia Bara, Minayin Shena Koshman was Aviz Manan, the Ilu Bechira the Karya Moav, Amr Rachman Al Moshe, Al Tetza Es Moav, Al Tiskabam Milchama. Okay, in other words, don't siege them and don't go to war with them. Milchama Amr Aleph Hudulay Havi, but Suri Tsurina, you can go ahead, you can shepherd with them. You can shepherd with Moav. Because why? Because they're mefarsim the Aveira, Moav, Mina Av. So she's mefarsim with the lineage of this child. Right. When we spoke out that story with Moshe Feinstein with the we won't repeat it, but it's there. Bilit Ira, the Karya Ben Ami, who hid, right? Amalei al Titzarim Vatiskam. It says al Titzarim Vatiskam. It says not only you can't even shepherd with them, right? So we're nicer to Ammon than we are in Moab because why? The lineage of this child was hidden. Al Tiskabam Mechlal. I feel it Suri like. I'm Rabbi Rabbi. I'm Rabbi Shur and Kar. Chaloilam Yagdam Adon Ledvar Mitzvah. A person should go ahead and chap the mitzvah as early as possible. Shebeschar Laila Echad Shekodem Bechira L'Tzira. The one night that the Bechira came before the Tzira, Zachsa v'Kadmasa Arba Doiris L'Malchus. 4 generations earlier. Let's see Rashi guys over here. Kodma Arba Doiris be Yisrael Oived, Yishai, David, Shloima. Right, Rus's son was Oved. Right, then Yishai, David, Shlomo. 4 generations. The Tzira was what the Havilah minama ha'amoinis. So 1 generation more. The Amoin she chapped the Rhine the Moab earlier, so therefore 1 generation earlier. Tanrabanan. Okay, back. So I'm sorry to tell you that it's over. I think that's why Penny's not on. Anyway. Okay, what does the pasuk say? Pasuk says, "The im nefesh achas techta bishkaga." If 1 nefesh is chayta bishkaga, this is the chatas yachid, right? Me ama aretz ba'asoisa achas mitzvah shema shaloisa senev ashem. So this is in the parsha of Vayikra Dalid, guys. This is what? This is the parsha of the yachid. I told you earlier in the Masechta a big chiddush that if the kohen does an Aveira, Shigas Maisa, without a Hayra, he's not going to bring a carbon. Remember that, guys. If the Kohen does a regular Joe is Shigas Maisa, you don't need a Hayra beforehand. If a Kohen goes ahead and acts Shigas Maisa, he's Pata. The Kohen Gadol. Where do you know that from? From this Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Tan Rabbanon, Me Ama Oretz, Prat LeMashiach. May Amaretz from among the Amorites, but not all of them, right? So that the Kohen will be pot. He won't bring a seira. He's May Amaretz prat Nasi. The Nasi mashma that what the Nasi also will be potter, but that doesn't make sense, guys. Why? Because the Nasi is chayiv shiggus ma'isa. Okay, but the Kvayotzu Mashiach lead them b'par, Nasi lead them b'seir, right? In other words, what do you mean you're taking them out of the parsha? Each one has their own unique carbon. As we said numerous times in this Masechta, the Yochid brings a female sheep or goat, the Kohen brings a bull, and the Nasi, the Melech, brings a male goat. So why do I need to tell me Me'ama Aretz that you exclude? I know they bring their own karbanis. Guys, you know what the answer is? They're excluded, period. They're excluded, period. That's what we're going to say by the Mashiach, by the Par not, by the Nasi not. Sheyachal, Mashiach al helam dava im shigas maisa, maybe Par, al shigas maisa l'chude, maybe kispa v'sira. I would think what? If where it's less, he brings a Par, where it's more severe, shouldn't he bring a sira? Again, it's a kula that in order for the kohen to mechayev a carbon, you need a hayra and then shigas maisa. So if for that is going to bring a par, it makes sense for one thing, Shigas Maisei should bring a Seira. Talmud Leima, therefore it says, Me Am Aretz. Talmud Leima, so what does it say? Talmud Leima Aretz, Prat Mashiach. Okay, so in other words, Prat Mashiach, he doesn't bring a Kispa. Guys, you know, he's out of the parsha, period. Me'ama Aretz, Pratlin Nasi, that the king is out of the ballpark. Tenach Mashiach, I understand why the Mashiach's out of the ballpark, because he has his Hayra and Shigas Maisa. El Nasi b'Shigas Maisa Udamaisi. Fellas, it makes no sense whatsoever. If the Nasi is chayiv when he just makes a mistake, is chayiv to bring a male goat, why is he out of the ballpark of Seira? He's the same parsha. If he does a Maisa without a Hayra, it's chayiv. Rav Zvid Mishmei the Rava Hachamay Askin against She'achol Kazayas Chaylev Kshu Hedyet. He eats a Kazayas Chaylev when he's a Hedyet. This is what I need the pasuk for. V'nismana v'yachkach noidala, and there he's informed afterwards. So Salka Amina Naise Kisboy Seira Kimash Malon. So he was a regular Joe. He didn't have he ate Chaylev. Now he's appointed the king. Comes the pasuk Me'am Haaretz to tell me your potter. Now, we had a machloikis, fellas, you might remember, between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim. Like Rabbi Shimon, not only do you have a chait, you need yediyah of the chait. According to the Chachamim, you go after the chait. According to Rabbi Shimon, you need yediyah and chait. So says the Gemara, Hanichal Rabbi Shimon, it makes sense, like Rabbi Shimon's not your potter from bringing a seir, the azal basa yediyah, that you go basa yediyah. Since he found out, fellas, after he'd been king, so it makes sense he's pata. Okay? So it makes sense he's pata. So you might think you're chayiv to bring a sira, kamash malon, you're not. El Rabbanon, the Azl Basal Chata, later Rabbanon that says you go after his chait, Mayikal and Meimar, is if he did a chait when he's a hedyet, he's going to bring a sira. So you can't tell me Ma'ama Aretz is to go ahead and take him out of the ballpark. He's in the ballpark. Again, Loite Chachamim, if he's a regular Joe and he eats chaylev and then becomes the Nasi, he has to bring what? A carbon. So Me'am Haaretz can't be Mamayir from that. According to Rav Shimon, yes. But according to tell me that he doesn't mean a carbon, even though he did an Aveira. According to the Chachamim, Mayikal and Meimar. Therefore, we're going to need a different limud for the Me'am Haaretz, Pratlin Nasi, what's it coming to exclude? Ella Amar Rav Zvid, Mishmei de Rava, Hachamay Askin, what are we dealing with over here? When he's a regular Joe, he eats half a zayas. Chatzi share, you're not going to be chayiv a carbon for. Vinismana, he then is appointed what? You have to eat this ktei achilas pras, so it's between 3 and 9 minutes. So at the 1 minute mark, he eats chaylev. At the 2 minute mark, half a kazayas. At the 2 minute mark, he becomes what? The king. And at the 3 minute mark, right, that ktei achilas pras, that was eating the other half. So you have a full what? You have a full share. V'yakach noidala salkadet ramin and nitztarif. I might think the second half is nitztarif to what? To the first half. Hello, little girl. V'naisi kiss by seira, and you bring a kiss ben seira. Kamash balon the pasuk me'am haaretz. So that's what the limit is for. He did half before, half afterwards. Me'am haaretz, that the king, that now that he's the king, he's not going to bring a kispa, even though he ate the share. But since he's a king on half the share, he was mashlim the share on when he was a kenig. When he was a king, then what? Then not. Good. Boy mine Rav Rav Nachman. Nesius mahu shetavsik. What's the din of Nesius going ahead and being mafsik? Heichi dami. What exactly is the Nesius being mafsik? Kigoin she'achol chatzi kezayis chaylev keshu hedyet. At the 1 minute mark, he eats what? Chatzi zayis chaylev. Vinismana. At the 2 minute mark, he's appointed the king. V'avar. At the 2.5 minute mark, he's taken down. Talk about a short time, he's taken down. V'shlimoy. At the 3 minute mark, he's going ahead and doing what? At the 3 minute mark, he's being mashlim the other half. Good? So you have half. Now, the Nesius is being mafsik, but fellas, he ate both halves as a hedyet. Guys, at the 1 minute mark, he was a hedyet. When he was mashlim at the 2.5, at the 3 minute mark, he was a hedyet. The Nesius that he was in between, and then he Does that mafsik or not? That's the Gemara Shaila. That's not a Shaila. So because he ate both as a hedyet. Hasam hu delay mitzaref da'achila palga k'shi hedyet palga k'shi nasi. The reason why he doesn't go ahead one and in guys in the case of where first he was a hedyet, then he was a nasi. The reason it's not mitzaref is because right he ate half as a hedyet and half as a nasi. Aval hacha the idi v'idi k'shu hedyet achle. Over here, since he ate both as a hedyet mitzaref, I'd say it is mitzaref. Maybe there's no difference. Guys, here the kasha. The first the case we're reminded from is Chatzi Zayas when he's a regular Joe, Chatzi Zayas when he's a king, and he's still the king. Says the pasuk, Ma'ama Aretz, and that he's not going to bring a sira. He's not or kispa. He's not going to bring it. What about this? Half when he was a king, Rehedyet, appointed king, leaves that, and now half when he's a hedyet. So you're eating both as a hedyet, but in between he was a king. Do we say that what? He's out of the ballpark, or do we say he's back in the ballpark? If he goes ahead and he eats chaylev, a full share of chaylev, he's chayiv b'shogeg, he's chayiv a carbon, v'hifish carbon, v'hemer, and now he goes off the derech, he becomes a mummer. The halacha is a mummer, we're not going to accept his carbon. V'chaza boy, and then what? He goes ahead and changes his mind. He comes back, he does tshuva. So guys, watch. He's in the ballpark. Mumma, he's out of the ballpark, and he changes his mind. He's out. So let's say the same thing over here. He was in the ballpark. He's out of the ballpark. Then he's back in the ballpark. No, he's not back in the ballpark. As a king for a half a minute in my scenario, he's out. So Mahachi Hashta. Mumma lav barasuya korbanhu. A mumma is not in the ballpark, period. Hi barisuri korbanhu. This is a barisuri korban. In other words, even when he's a king, he can bring it's not a mumma is out because we won't accept his carbon. A king, the shiler is which carbon is he going to bring? Is he going to bring a seir? Is he going to bring a par? But he's in the ballpark, so mamela you can't be paished the shiler but from a mummer. A mumma is totally out of the ballpark. The king isn't out of the ballpark, guys. The king's out of the ballpark of a seira, but he's still in the ballpark of a seir. So mamela you can't be paished from him. Maybe he's still back in the ballpark, so you're not paished the shiler. He eats a suffix chelik when he's a hedyet. So what's the halacha? You bring an asham talui. If you eat a suffix until you're bavarn, you get clear that there was a chatas, you bring an asham talui. Vinismana, and then he's appointed as king. V'noidaloi al sveikoi, and when he's a king, he finds out that he had eaten a suffix chelik. Mahu. We don't, since the Aveira took place when he was a hedyet, you're going to bring Nashim Tali. Right. The Shaila is according to Reb Shimon. Now, what's the Shaila according to Reb Shimon? Midi Ishtnei Levadai Ishtnei Lesafik. Okay. You're speaking over here, guys, about what? You're speaking about a person who you're changing his carbon completely. So you're going, guys, from vad. I'm 1 second. Let me. Fellas, what does Reb Shimon hold? Reb Shimon holds you need the yediyah and the chet at the same time. Good? So what happened over here? If he vadai did this, let's say vadai, let's say he ate chaylev, but he only found out after he ate chaylev, after he became the king. Ishtani, right? He doesn't bring the carbon. He would have brought the carbon, had the yediyah and the chet at the same time. But since he found that afterwards, since the chet found that afterwards, he's out. Do we say the same thing by the suffix? No, it's by suffix. So kivin the ishni levadai ishni l'suffix. So in other words, by Asham Tali, we'll say the same thing. That since he found out after he was king, just like if he did vadai chet, he found after he was king, he doesn't bring a carbon. Who had din? Who adin that what? If he finds out a suffix, he won't bring a carbon. That's one sad. Dilma ki ishtani levadai the ishtani carbon day. Guys, when the king he goes from what seira as a hedyet to a sayer as a king. He's going from a female to a male, and therefore over here he's going from what from a asham taloi, right, to an asham taloi. So maybe Reb Shimon would be moida that since there's no change in the carbon, even the idea afterwards, he would be able to bring it. Again, one more time. Here's a tooth start into the shaila. Like Reb Shimon, that you need a idea at the same time of the chait. So if he ate vaday chelev, if he ate vaday chelev at this time, and he finds out after he's king, he's pater, because it wasn't in the same time frame. Asham taloi, I could say maybe what? Asham taloi. I could say the same. I could say the same thing by Asham taloi. Good. What does that mean? Since by suffix also, if he find out afterwards, if he ate suffix chelev, he'd have to be Asham taloi. But now he finds out after he's king. So maybe the same thing as a vadai. Just like by a vadai, if he ate, he'd be pata. So to by Asham taloi be pata. Or no, maybe the reason the king is pata is because the carbon changes. It goes from a seira as a hedyet to a sayer as the nasi. Mashenkein asham talui does not change. As a hedyet he brings an asham talui, and as a nasi he brings an asham talui, right? So memela, therefore, you should have to bring it. Though that's the tooth starting to the shaila. On that the Gemara says. So the ema lacy asham talui. So the Gemara says teku. Torabanan me'ama aretz prat lemumur. So this is the third one. We had ama aretz. We bring a carbon from, well, excluding a Mashiach, meaning he's never going to bring it. Me'am Oretz, the king, where he eats chaylev, right? When the king goes ahead and eats chaylev, and he is a half before and a half afterwards, it won't be mitzaref, right? And now we have a third din. Prat lemumar. A mumar, we won't accept this carbon. A mumar is a person who rebels against Hashem. Reb Shimon Yosi Omer, Mishum Reb Shimon. It says, "Asher lo sasenu b'shgaga v'ashem." Hashav mi diyasai may be carbon al shigagasai. Lo yishav mi diyasai ain't mi carbon al shigagasai. Okay, we had this earlier. The mumma doesn't bring, but can be one of two reasons. The mumma doesn't bring because may ama aretz, not everybody, and he's excluded like the king and the kayin. Or no, the one who, if you told him he did an avera, he'd want to do tshuva. Shav mi diyasai. Shav. When he gets his idea that he did something wrong, shav, he's going to do tshuva. The mumar, when he finds out he did an avera, he's going to say, "Fasket miran." He goes, "I'm good," right? So Mamela, they're both learning the same halacha, but from two different parts of the pasuk, from two pasukim. Now the Gemara wants to know, "My binayu, is there enough kamina between learning from Araretz or V'shav Me'adiyasai?" Amrav Amnuna mumar lechol chelev, who may be carbon aladam ikabinayu. He brings right. He's a mumma to eat chelev, and he brings a carbon on dam. Will be accepted or not? Masava, the one who says me ama aretz kivin the mumma lechol chelev ledam nami mumma havi. Since he's a mumma for one thing, he's a mumma for the other thing. So if he's going to go ahead and bring a carbon for what? For dam, we're not going to accept it, even though he's a mumma feeding chelev. So that would be the first. That would be the opinion of Reb Shimon. That would be the opinion of the Tanakama, and Umasav and Reb Shimon Yosi would hold. Who, if you tell him that he's a mumma for eating chelev, but if you go ahead and tell him that you ate dam, he's going to do tshuva, and therefore you will accept his carbon. So that's the nafkamina between the two. Whether you would accept his carbon for another avera. He ate chelev, and he's bringing a carbon for dam. Do we accept it or not? According to Mandi Omer, he's a mumma chelev. It's mashma. If he's a mumma chelev, it's a mumma for dam. Also, we won't accept it. According to Reb Shimon Reb Yosi, who says that Mishavmi the Yasa, if he finds out what he did, he'll do tshuva. Here he'll do tshuva for. He won't do tshuva for chelev, but he'll do tshuva for what? For dam. Here's the problem. Everyone agrees that if he's a mumma for chelev, he's not a mumma for dam, and you would accept the carbon. So you don't have an afkamina between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon Reb Yosi. Again, if he's bringing a carbon, right, he's being a carbon for dam. It must be that what he's just a mumma for that thing, but he's not a mumma for this thing. And Memela, my nafkamina, in both cases, you're going to accept this carbon, whether you learn it from Meyam Aretz or you learn it from Shav Midiyasai. Ela, here's the nafkamina. Elahacha ba'oichel nevela l'teyavan v'nischadlei b'shumin v'achlu. This guy eats what nevela b'teyav. This guy he's a glutton. He mamish loves to eat. He loves to eat, and he eats his nevela. But he eats it not to get Hashem angry. He eats it l'teyavin. He eats it for what? For an appetite. He now wants to eat shumin. He wants to eat kosher fat, and he ends up eating what? Treifa fat. Would he being a carbon or not? Would he being a carbon or not? Masavar kivin l'te'avin achal b'mezid mumahu. Since l'te'avad he would eat it because he's a glutton. He's a mummer and we won't accept his carbon. Umasavar kivin the ilu eshkach the teirel. Since we find kosher to eat and not nevela, loy achal, he wouldn't eat it. The surah lav mamahu. That's the nafkamina. Loy demand the Amma that one who says the Tanakama that's mumma that if he eats that he says that he's a me'amar it's his mumma. So if he's a mumma for gluttony, it doesn't make a difference what whether he's not going to change his mind by chaylev. If he's hungry enough, he's going to eat it. Says Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, no. If he was what? If he was if he only eat it if he couldn't find something else. That's when he'll eat it. But Stam as though he won't eat it. And the Mela what? He would bring a carbon, we would accept his carbon. Taner Rabbanan. Okay. Now, this is we're picking up, it's very, very, very cryptic. So if you look at Rashi, guys, on the left side, I say parallel to the Gemara about 12 lines down. It says, Katani ochel chelev shchuta. If someone eats chelev from a kosher animal, mumma, he's a mumma. V'hadatani eze mumma, and then it says who's a mumma. So just Taner Rabbanan. So let's just put in the words. A guy who eats chelev from a kosher animal. Ochel chelev from a kosher animal, zehu mumma. That's a mumma. Ve'eze mumma, and what's a mumma? Ochel nevelis trefish gatzim ramashim. If you eat the veil trefish, gatzim mashim, shasi yayin esach. So I don't understand. You just told me a mumma eats chelev shchuta. Now you tell me a mumma is someone who eats what? The veil is trefish, gatzim mashim. In other words, you're speaking with forked tongue, right? You're speaking with forked tongue. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, af halovish kalayim, even someone who wears kalayim is a mumma. Amamar Baruch Hashem. We're going to go over the brisa. Amamar. We're going to go over the brisa now. Achol chelev zeu mumma, ve'ezu mumma, achol nevelis. My comma, what are you talking about? You just told me a mumma is someone who's chelev. Now, my comma, it doesn't read. Amar Rabbi Rav Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, haki kama. Achol chelev l'teyavin. If a person eats chelev for his own teyav, for his own appetite, he's a mumma. Now, he's not rebelling against Hashem. He just has a taiva. He has a taiva to eat. But he's not rebellious. If he had something else to eat, he eats something else. But given the circumstances, he'll eat chelev. Lahachis, if he goes ahead and eats chelev lahachis, in other words, he has choices, but he dafka eats chelev. In other words, he can go to Essen on Coney and he goes to McDonald's. Right? He can go to a kosher restaurant and he opts to go for a treifa place. Then he's a mulahachis. Harizet sidoiki. Guys, you have a letter over there on the word sidoiki? You should have some type of letter showing you to go somewhere else. It says bitvus vitsina hagirsa in the different. The girsa is a min. Mitamida yeshinoitzri. Rashi says, you know what the nafkamina is? That his shchita would be avodah zara. You know, it's when saying tzedaki over here, we're saying it over the avodah zara. That's why min might be a better girsa. So the question is, a regular mumma is l'teyavin. A mumma lahachis has a din wat of a tzedaki of a min, and you won't accept its carbon would be by the zara. There's a mumma the mistama tzedaki have, and who's the mumma that stamazoi is a tzedaki? Now, if you're eating shigatzim or ramashim, guys, why are you eating that? You have a timer for that, or you want to get anger Hashem? So even though you know he's not a mumma lahachis, So we're touching up. Who is considered a min that you can't eat from his avodah zara? That's when we read nevelish trefus kosher ramash. So that's the way you read the brisa. Eza mumma, who's a mumma? Someone who eats what chelef. That's the te'ovin. And what is a mumma that is what is a mumma that stam a mumma is a tzedaki? Is what the lahachis is someone who eats nevelish trefus kosher ramash. On that, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omer afa lavish kalayim. Even someone with kalayim. My benayu, it could be nayu kalayim derabanan. Masav midiraisa having mumma. Just like eating nevelish trefus kosher ramash, that makes you a tzedaki. So too, wearing kalayim deraisa, where it's shaveh tuv v'nuz, it's intertwined together. When you're a tzedaki. But the rabbanon, let's say it's a shatnez rabbanon, then you won't be a tzedaki. Umasava and Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda holds kalayim kivin the mefarsa yisura, since it's well known it's iser. I feel a bit the rabbanon having mumma, even the rabbanon being okay. They do be a mumma. So that's the pshat in the brisa. Mumma, who's a mumma, the te'ovin, mumma lahachis, he's a tzedaki or a min. And how do we know if he's eating shkatzim matzim and vela trevis shkatzim matzim and wearing shatnez? Then what? And then he would be a lahachis. He'd be a tzedaki. Pligi b'ravacha of Ravina. Chadam al te'ovin mumma lahachis tzedaki. Chadam lahachis nami mumma. Lahachis also only a mumma, not a tzedaki. Ela ezet tzedaki. Kol oivet avodas kechavim. You have to be serving avodah zara. So this is a very cool tikashita. Any mumma would not be lahachis. It automatically would be the te'ovin. Okay. Mesivei achol parosh, if he eats a flea, echad or yitash echad, or one gnat or mosquito, how's a mumma? I have a hachad de lahachasu, because no one else is eating that for any other reason. The kakarle mumma. So you see it's shver that even if someone who go ahead would eat it's lahachas and he's called a mumma. Shver, and the person that said mumma lahachas is a min. Says etem tam surah. But no, it's not lahachas over here. He's saying, you know what? I never tasted a gnat before. I never tasted a flea before. So he's not doing lahachas and maybe he's a mumma. But enochinami, had he did lahachas, he would be considered a tzedaki. Vezun nasi. Why do we sue the nasi? Zeh melech. Tan rabbanon nasi. Yachal nasi shavit kenachshin ben aminadav. Maybe the special halacha of bringing the seir applies to who? To the nasi of a shavit, not the melech Klal Yisrael, like nachshin ben aminadav. Talmud loymar mikol mitzvahs Hashem elakav. It says from all the mitzvahs Hashem on him. Well, halon oimen by the parsha of the king, the man yilmud liyiras Hashem elakav. Amid beis. Ma'ala halan she'ein al gabav ela Hashem elakav. There's no one higher than Hashem. So then the king, af nasi, so to the nasi, shein al gabav ela Hashem elakav. So again, only the king. Rebbe Merabchia. Now Rebbe he had a contemporary Reb Chia, of course, was the uncle of Rav, and he was Rebbe's Talmud Muvik, and he had a din of a Tana, and he was there. Rebbe is the following Shaila. Rebbe was the Nasi. Guys, there were two Nasiim. There was the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael, and there was Reish Galusa in Bavel. Okay, Nasi in Eretz Yisrael, Reish Galusa in Bavel. The Nasi, he was the descendant from the maternal side of David, and the Reish Galusa, he was from the paternal side of David. Okay, so that's the chiluk between them. Now, he wants to know, does he have a din of bringing a par? Now, he's living well after the Churban Bayis. This is a hypothetical question. If I was alive, b'shas Churban Bayis, and I did an Aveira, would I have to bring a Seir or a Seira? That's what Rebbe wants to know. Mahu b'Seir. So Amalei, Reb Chia told him, your tzara is in Bavel. So obviously that since your tzara is in Bavel, you wouldn't have to. Esevei, Malchei Yisrael, Malchei Beis David. We know that the Malchus was split. Yeravim was Malchei Yisrael, and then Malchei Yehuda. Elam Evin La'atzman, Elam Evin La'atzman. Both have a din of a king, and they both bring a seir. So l'chayra good. There's a Reish Galus in Bavel. So why is Reb Chia telling Rebbe, you wouldn't bring it because of Reish Galus in Bavel? You see by the two kings, each one brought a par, would have to bring a par. So wouldn't Rebbe would have to bring I said par, seir. So too, Rebbe would bring a seir. Amalei. So he told him, Hasam loy kaifi ahadadi. There, the Melech Yehuda and Melech Bavel, they were the Melech Yehuda, Melech Yisrael. They could not force each other. They were equal footing. Hacha, here in Eretz Yisrael, Anoch Chafinan Lahu B'Didu. We are subsidiary to what? To Bavel. And since we're secondary to Bavel, you don't have the din of a say of bringing a seya. Safra Masni Hachi. Boy, I mean, this is where Safra learns. Boy, I mean, Rabbi Mebchia. Kikoin Ano Ani Mahu B'Seir Amalei Hasam Shavit Hacha Mechoykek. Over there it says Ashenas Yechta Hasam Shavit Hacha Mechoykek. Betanya Lo Yasa Shavit Mi Yehuda. So the Shavit, guys, is considered, the Shavit is considered a Nasi, right? The Shavit is considered the king, and the Mechoykik is considered the lawgiver. And Rebbe, you're the lawgiver. That's his teretz. So in other words, he's going to tell him that you part from the Seiya. Hasam Shavit Hacham Mechoykik. V'Tanya Lo Yasa Shavit in Brichas Yaakov. Lo Yasa Shavit Mi Yehuda. Zeh Reish Goyla Shebebavel. Sheroides Yisrael B'Makel, who goes ahead and rules Klal Yisrael with a stick. U'Mechoykim Mein Raglav. Elu B'nei Banim Shel Hillel. Shem Lam Torah Yisrael B'Rabim. So Rebbe was the descendant of Hillel. The Mechoykik. So Lasa Shavit Yehuda, only the Shavit is considered Nasi. You're not the Nasi, Rebbe, and either way, whether the first Lashon or the second Lashon, you're not going to bring a Seir, either because you're subsidiary to Bavel, or because Bavel is the king and you're not. Be'ezel Mashiach, who's the Kohen Mashiach? HaMashiach b'Shem HaMishcha. He's the one that was anointed with the Shem HaMishcha. Loi Hamru be'Begodim. We know that Tzidkiyahu Melech, he hid the Aron. Among the Aron, he hid the Tzitzenes Hamon, and he also hid the Shem HaMishcha. He also hid the Shem. He hid the Shem and Mishcha, and I just remember the Rambam. It's not so pashut. Anyway, but he had the Shem and Mishcha. So after he had the Shem and Mishcha, how would someone become a Kohen Gadol if he's not anointed? They go ahead and Meruba. They would increase his begadim. He'd go from 4 to 8. Right? The Kohen Gadol was 8 begadim, and a Kohen Hedya was 4. So a Meruba begadim is not. He's not going to bring a par. He's not going to bring a seir. He's not going to bring a par. So he is going to bring a seira like a regular Joe. He's not going to bring a par like a Kohen Gadol. Let's say you had a Kohen Gadol who served for a day. Let's say that for some reason the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur he was out and he was replaced, and then so that person, the only difference between them. Hello. Baruch, you want to get on this?
Good luck.
Okay, anyway. So, Ela Par Yom Kippur Basiris Eif. What's the difference by the Par Mishamish the Kohen Shavar, the Par of Yom Kippur, the Par that the Kohen brings in Yom Kippur, and the Asiris Eif you brought every day. You brought here from the morning, here from the afternoon. It says of Shavim Bavodas Yom Kippur, they both can do the Avodah Yom Kippur. Umitzavim ala Psula, they both commanded not to marry Psula. Vasurim ala Almana, they can't marry an Almana. The mitzvah to marry Psula, they can't marry an Almana. They both can't be mitama the Krovaseim, even as onanim. They don't go ahead and let the hair go unshorn, and they don't rip their clothing. And when they die, the Ritzeach who kills B'Shogeg returns. Now the Gemara goes ahead and explains what exactly is the Shem and Mishcha. Tan Rabbanan. Shem and Mishcha, Sasa Moshe b'Midbar. How did Moshe make it? Hayashulkin boy esay karim. He took the oil and he put all the ingredients in, and he went ahead and he boiled it up. Now here's the problem. This is based upon Art Scroll. We know that the shemen was 12 loigin. 12 loigin is between 1 and 2 gallons. 1 and 2 gallons. The ingredients of the shkalim were 1,750 shkalim, or 47.75 pounds. If you're going to take a gallon or 2 of oil and put in that amount of ingredients, all the oil is going to be absorbed in the ingredients, so you won't have any oil. We need shemen amishcha. We need shemen that has those ingredients in them. But you have a problem. If you're going to cook it together, boil it up, all the oil is going to be absorbed in the ikrim, in the roots of all these kainings. So therefore, that's problematic. So Rabbi Yehuda says you boil it up, and Rabbi Yossi to go ahead and to take the oil and just rub it on the roots. You didn't have enough oil, so therefore certainly to boil it up you wouldn't have enough oil. What would you do? You would go ahead and you would boil in water the ingredients, and now the ingredients are absorbing water. They're absorbing a lot of water. And now umatziv alav shemen, then you would pour on these all the roots of these ingredients. You'd pour shemen, and it would absorb the smell. The kapchu, and then Moshe would go ahead, and since it was on the root, the oil absorbed the smell. Moshe then would wipe the oil off that had the absorption of the root in it, and you'd have the shemen hamishcha. So that was Rabbi Yehuda's way, Rabbi Yosef's way of saying machlokes how Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, it was reported. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda, you boiled it up. Rabbi Yosef says no, you made him absorb the water first, then you went ahead and poured the shemen hamishcha on it. Then Moshe wiped it off, and therefore it was koiled, it absorbed the smell of those roots. Only Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Yossi. You're telling me that what you boiled it up and it got absorbed. You think that is that pashut that it couldn't happen, that it has to be absorbed? You know how many nisim were done with the shemen hamishcha? But chilasei shnei masa loigin. The chila was 12 loigin. Umimenu, and from these 12 loigin, nimshach mishkan. The whole mishkan was anointed. The kelev, all the kelev in the base of Mikdash was anointed. Aaron Ubanov, Aaron's sons were anointed. Kol shivas yimei amilu, for 7 days. The kulin kaim lasalavay. You know how much you can have left over? 12 loigin. So, if it never gets used up, why do you think that when you made it, that it would get absorbed? If it never gets used up, never gets used up. Shneimar shemen mischos kodesh yez zeli l'darasechem. Someone learns that from the word li, that is always for me Hashem. Some people say l'darasechem, it's always for darasechem. Tanya Yidach, another brisa. Vayikach Moshe shemen hamishcha, vayimshach es hashmishkan, v'eskol hashaboy. Rabbi Yehuda oimer shemen hamishcha shasa Moshe b'midbar kama nisim nasu bay. Mitchilasa v'atzayf tchilasa, loihoye el shneim asa loigin. Roa kama yoreh balos. How much does the pot absorb when you go ahead and boil it up? The kama ikrim boilim. How much the ikrim absorb? The kama or soyrif boil. How much when evaporates as a result of the fire? Uboy nimshach mishkan the kela ve'aron abanav kol shivas yimei amloyim. Uboy nimshchu kahan gedolim umalachim. Afilu kohen gadol ben kohen gadol toyim mashicha. The kohen gadol the son of kohen gadol is mashicha. Ve'im moshne melech ben melech. The king, it's a hereditary position. You don't have to go ahead and do that. Why would they go ahead and be Moshe Shloima? Because Adoniyahu was disagreeing. He thought he should be the Melech. So therefore, even though Shlomo was the son of David and the Melech is not anointed, they anointed Shlomo to go ahead and be Mefarsim that he's the next king. There's Yoash Atalia who killed out everybody, and the Yoash was the only remaining descendant. And there's Yehoyachaz Yakam Shayagad Mimenu Shtei Shanim. V'oisa Shemen Kaim Lo Asalav V'Shnema Shemen Mishlos Kodesh Yezeli. And Zeb Gematria Shnei Masa Loigin Havi. So in other words, we have two statements of Tanoim explaining about what the nest of the Shemen and Mishcha. So guys, very geschmack that what to say that it's possible to go ahead, take the 12 loigin, boil it up in the ingredients, and it still be around, because since Nisim would done with it, so the teva of being absorbed in the roots would be also a nest would happen and would be absorbed. Amamar, going back over to Baisa. How do you know Kohen Gadol son of Kohen is Mashiach? The Chsiv, but Kohen Mashiach tachtav mibanav, and the Kohen that Mashiach tachtav mibanav. Name a krov Kohen mitachtav mibanav. Just say the word the Kohen from his sons in his place. My HaMashiach. Why add the word Mashiach? Kemash Malon. That you're going to say the Mevi, the Kemash Malon, the Mibanav the Kohen Gadol. Yavi Mashiach, Havi Kohen Gadol, Viloil Havi Kohen Gadol. When it says HaKohen HaGadol HaMashiach, when it says in the word Mashiach, is to teach you that it has to be that he is Nimshach. If not, he's not going to get the position. It wasn't an inheritance. Amamar, V'ein Moishchin Melech Ben Melech, Minalon, Amr Rav Acha Bar Yaakov D'chsiv, L'man Yarech Yom Al Mamlachtoi. Yerusha he, it's Yerusha Lachem. Minalon D'chi Ika Machlokes, Boy Mashiach, when there's Machlokes who the king is, that what you need Mashiach. V'lav called the boy Malka Moiris Malchusa L'maneha, right? Don't they go ahead and inherit it? So once it's an inheritance, why do they have to do Mashiach? So my papa Makrov, who banav b'kerev Yisrael? Bisman sheshalom b'Yisrael karina behu banav. When the shalom b'Yisrael, it's hu b'banav. You don't need Mashiach. Vafilu b'loy Mashiach. Okay, but Mashen came with this machlokes, then you need Mashiach. Tana af yehu ben nimshi lo nimshach elam b'fnei machlokes shal yoram v'tepik le mishum de the Rishon who? He's the first one. So you have to read the following. Malchei Beis David Meshuchim, Malchei Beis Yisrael Ein Meshuchim. Malchei Beis David, they had Meshicha. Malchei Yisrael, that Yeravam started this Malchei Yisrael, they're not Nimshach at all. So Amar Rava, Amar Kra, Kum Meshchehu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Shmuel to get up, Kum Meshchehu Ki Zehu. He's commanded to get up and anoint David. Zeh Toy Meshicha. Only Malchus Beis David needs Meshicha. Bein Acha Toy Meshicha. Okay. Amar Af Yehu ben Nimshi le Nimshach Elam Fnei Machalkusa Shal Yoram. Says the Gemara, Misham Machalkusa Shal Yoram ben Achav Nimol b'Shemen. How can you be Moel b'Shemen? How can you be Moel b'Shemen Mishra? Kido Amar Rav Papa b'Afar Simon Dachya. They didn't use the Shemen on Mishra. They used pure Afar Simon. Hachanami Afar Simon Dachya. That's Yehoichas Mifnei Yaakam Shaygol Mimenu Shtei Shanim. Umikashas Mimenu was the older 2 years. Vaksiv Ubnei Yoshiyahu Habachar Yochanan Hashenu Yayakam Hashlishi Tzidkiyahu Harvi Shalom. Rabbi Yochanan who Shalom who Tzidkiyahu is the same person. Who Yochanan who Yachas. So you see Yachas was that Yochanan was first. Oilam Yayakam Kashas was older. Umay Bachar he means Bachar Lamalchus. Umi Malchi Zutra Mikami Kachisha. Does the younger one serve before the older one? Vaksiv Besamamlacha Nasan Le'ayaram Kiwa Bachar. Does Haram Mali Malkam voice of who? Yakam Lam Mali voice of who? He wasn't going. One was fulfilled taking his father's place, the other one was not. Okay, we'll see what that's like.